going live on YouTube, and we are now live. Welcome everyone who's watching via YouTube. We're getting ready to start our broadcast, a radio broadcast. We have Andy Gauss with us today from Bay State Repeal here in Massachusetts, and so just buckle up. We have about a minute before airtime.
Here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream,
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You certainly come to the right place.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a Friday episode of the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. We want to welcome you at 7:30 in the morning. So that means you're either at work or on your way to work. And wherever you are, I want to thank you for spending time with us. You could have been anywhere in the world today, but you decided to be here with us. And we greatly appreciate that. So a lot going on around the world, a lot happening, particularly in Baltimore uprising. What's going on is the people of Baltimore have decided that they are going to take this into their own hands. They've taken to the streets, and despite what the media has been telling us about rioting, what's actually happening is protest, and we have the right as citizens to protest. So I'm going to deal with that a little bit today with regard to how they're spinning this to be about violent riots, and they want to convince us that everything that's happening in Baltimore is barbaric or out of control, when in actuality the people are merely expressing their constitutional right to assemble and to protest and to let the powers that be know that they're dissatisfied with what's happening in their community. And you know what? If this was an issue that was near and dear to those on the right, those conservatives, they would be out in the street protesting too. So it's not, I want to make something clear at the top of this. What's happening right now in Baltimore is not a series of riots. There was a riot on Monday, and we discussed that. We understand why it happened. We knew the kids were let out of school early. They were let out of school without any transportation. And so what happens when you get a bunch of teenagers in one area with nowhere to go, with anger and upset, legitimate anger? Then you see what happened on Monday. So we'll unpack all that. But I just wanted from the top of the show, I needed to address that. Another thing, I want to. We've been unpacking all of the different factors that are at play with regard to not only Baltimore, but every other city where there's a potential for not only protest, peaceful protest, but there's a potential for rioting because of the injustices, because of the police brutality, because of the lack of economic opportunity. On Wednesday, we discussed with John Little from Tennessee. We discussed the disparities in education and how that plays a role into it. But today, I want to talk about how the war on drugs has played a significant role in what we see, the injustices and the disparity of treatment between people. Well, really, I'm not going to speak. I have a guest here today, and I don't want to unpack it too much without bringing my guest on and letting him speak and give his insight into it. Today, I have Andy Gauss from Bay State Repeal. Bay State Repeal here in the state of Massachusetts, they are focused on the decriminalization of marijuana. And marijuana is one of those drugs that is so ubiquitous. It is everywhere. Yet it disproportionately the enforcement of drug laws disproportionately affects impoverished communities, and particularly communities of color. And so before I go too much further, I want to welcome Andy. Andy, how are you this morning?
Good. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you with us. So Andy, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell us about what Bay State Repeal is, what you guys stand for and what it is you guys are trying to do?
Right. My name is Andy Gauss. I'm a writer and musician living in the Boston area. I've been active in cannabis activism for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm a member of both the main organizations for cannabis activism in Massachusetts. One of them is the Massachusetts Cannabis Reform Coalition, mm-hmm. Which is also a chapter of the national organization, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML. Mm-hmm. And the other is Bay State Repeal. The difference is that MassCan is really only an educational organization, mm-hmm. and people can contribute to it anonymously as a nonprofit. Bay State Repeal has the purpose of actually putting an initiative on the ballot and getting it passed. And that means it's a political action committee. And by the way, that means people have to donate to it openly.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go for
it. We don't know whether we will put an initiative on the ballot ourselves, or whether we will end up working with another organization, which would be the Marijuana Policy Project. It depends on whether we think that the bill that they come up with is good enough.
Okay, so let me jump in there and ask some key questions, because I think this is an important conversation. This is in the broader narrative in the United States of the decriminalization of marijuana specifically. You guys focus on cannabis, marijuana. Your focus is not on all drugs, but there is a movement for the decriminalization of all drugs. But tell me, but at the very top, I want you to help people understand, because this is something that I didn't understand. And hopefully you can unpack this for us. What is the difference of decriminalizing something, marijuana, versus making it legal?
Okay. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was going to get to that, because decriminalization actually has already been accomplished in Massachusetts in 2008. The difference is that decriminalization means that if you're caught with marijuana, it isn't a crime, which means that you won't be arrested and convicted and sentenced to prison if it's less than an ounce that you're caught with. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that it's perfectly legal for you to have it. What we're working on now is actually legal recreational sales to adults, and we hope to have that on the ballot in 2016.
Okay, so then now if it is decriminalized and if it's less than an ounce, you won't go to jail. How has that affected arrest rates, not just in communities of color, but impoverished communities? Because one thing we know about our criminal justice system is that the wealthier you are, the less likely you are to get arrested for things. So since the decriminalization in 2008, how have we seen, what has been the effects on poor communities and minority communities?
Yes, I believe that arrests are down, but we haven't entirely stopped the stop and frisk, that sort of activity that is just at the heart of terrible police and community relations. Mm-hmm. It's funny. A lot of people in most of our organization is white. We have black members. We certainly don't chase them away. Mm-hmm. And yet, maybe it's that our members feel that they can be activists safely. But boy, you would think that black people would be absolutely all over this issue. Mm-hmm. Because yes, the sort of thing that happens in Ferguson, what happens first is a lot of stop and frisk, a lot of low-level marijuana arrests, and a lot of distrust between police and community that makes all cooperation impossible.
And we see that, like you said, yeah, we see that in Ferguson. We see that across the United States. A lot of low-level offenses, non-violent crimes. We see a lot of people in other states where it's still criminalized. We see a lot of people in jail for petty crimes, and with regards to drugs, not selling drugs necessarily, but possession. And so we see that is disproportionately, that has and does disproportionately affect communities of color. It affects people impoverished more so than any other demographic. And so I definitely commend you guys on what you guys are doing. One thing I know about Boston, though, one thing I know about Boston, I guess it's just maybe your membership is reflective of the population. Of course, there are large communities of color here in Boston, but percentage-wise, I've maybe I just need to get out more. I'm just, percentage-wise, I think it's just kind of reflective of what Boston looks like. But you're absolutely right in this much, that there is a movement to that. It's the war on drugs is a scourge. It has been a scourge on the entire United States since it was initiated, and it has disproportionately affected minorities and impoverished communities. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, people need to get involved, but you hit on something key. You said that perhaps it is that your white membership feels more free to be active in this area. Could you unpack that a little bit more for me?
Well, it's when you say that it affects minority communities disproportionately, I would put it a little more simply. The whole crime of marijuana possession is holding while black. We recently heard a confession from a former federal, fairly high level drug enforcement officer who said that he was told by his superiors, we can't have raids out in the suburbs. Those people have lawyers. They'll shut us down. So we'll just continue having our raids in the inner cities.
See, we know this intellectually, and I'm glad you just made it plain, but just to hear the reality of it, repeat that for me one more time. What did he tell you about doing raids in the suburbs?
Well, if you do raids in the suburbs, those people have lawyers. They're going to say, well, I'm not going to let my kid go to jail.
Right.
And the supervisor said, if those people really question what we're doing, why, they might be able to shut us down. In other words, the supervisor acknowledged that probably there were constitutional and potential real legal problems with the sort of thing that they were doing, but they figured that they could get away with it. In the inner city communities.
And you know what? The sad reality is they have gotten away with it because we don't have many African Americans do not have access to the legal system in the same manner as the people in the suburbs. And this is one distinction that it does hurt Black people disproportionately so. But the more research I study into it, it is. I'm going to say something here, and I want the audience to give me time to unpack it. It is a poverty issue because you could have a very wealthy African American who has great access to lawyers who could probably get away with some of the same things as their colleagues in their same economic strata. So it just so happens, though. No, let me take that back. It's not just so happens. There's a specific reason that African Americans are overwhelmingly disproportionately representative in impoverished communities. And so not only do we see that it's an intersection of the fact that we're Black, right? And so there's this suspicion of criminality that is already on our backs, but now we're impoverished and we don't have, and not even impoverished. Sometimes poverty is a loaded word, but most of us, even in the middle class, don't have the funds and the resources to have lawyers at our beckoning call to fight back against unjust investigations, frisks, searches, and undue process. So instead of due process. So I absolutely hear you and what you're saying. And so now tell us, once here in Massachusetts, you guys get this initiative on the ballot, whether it's 2016 or 2020, whenever you get it on the ballot, what are some of the effects that you're looking for? What are some of the things that you're hoping to happen when you guys get this on the ballot and let's say it passes? What happens next?
Well, we certainly hope that there will be a lot a lot fewer SWAT teams busting down the door at 2 a.m. to find the marijuana. One issue that is of particular importance to us is the right of home cultivation, because, and it's a couple of issues at once. For one thing, it's a consumer issue. If you don't like the prices in the stores, you should be able to, grow your own, in the same way that if you don't like the prices of the designer dresses, you can make your own dresses. And also, because it's such a civil rights issue, people who want to grow just should not live in constant fear of the police as if they're doing something terribly harmful. So we demand any initiative that Bay State Repeal will support must have a decent home grow provision.
All right, listen, Andy, we're going to take a break. I don't mean to cut you off right there, but we're up against a hard break. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the importance of eliminating the black market. And that's something that you mentioned to us in our pre-interview, and I want to definitely get on that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Andy Gauss from Bay State Repeal, and we're talking about not only the decriminalization, but the legalization of marijuana here in Massachusetts, and the broader conversation of the effects of the war on crime, war on drugs, and how that plays a significant role, not only in cities like Ferguson, but also in cities like Baltimore. So when we come back, we're going to unpack this a lot more. Andy, you just stay tuned. We'll be back after this break. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Benjamin Dixon Show. You can join the conversation, 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
I want to be a warm fleece on a
I want
cold
to be
day.
a football
I want to
stadium.
be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm still here with Andy Gauss of the Bay State Repeal, and we're discussing the effects of the war on drugs and the broader conversation. But actually, I want to ask you about this, Andy, something that you sent me. And you were telling me, you just talked about the importance of legal home cultivation. It's Friday. But here's the thing. I always had this suspicion that the fact that we make things illegal necessarily creates a black market. A black market in which people will go and seek seek what they're looking for, regardless of whether they can get it in the store or whether they can get it on the block. So tell me about your expectations, your experience, or what you see in Bay State repeal, what you guys see with regard to the existing black market, and then what do you expect to happen afterwards?
Well, it depends. It depends how the law is framed. What we know about the black market can really be summarized in Massachusetts by looking at alcohol and cigarettes. Alcohol is taxed at a low rate, and we don't have much in the way of speakeasies and moonshine and bootleggers. Cigarettes are considered a mortal sin, and the sin taxes are piled on sky high, and the result is that we have a considerable amount of the market, 40% by some estimates in Boston, consists of out-of-state cigarettes that have been bootlegged in from other states with lower taxes. We would really like that not to happen with marijuana once it's made legal, so we don't want the taxes to be too high. And we've seen that in Colorado. In Colorado, I think everyone agrees that the black market has not been killed, and that's not surprising because people are paying, at least, in many cases, $40 or $50, in taxes for single ounce, and that's enough to make people think, well, gee, if my dealer doesn't charge that, why do I need to give the government all that money?
So it's not only it's not the fact that it's decriminalized, and it's not even the fact that it's legal, but it's now these exorbitant taxes that are on top of it that perpetuates the black market. And anyone who understands who's done any type of basic observation, I won't even say analysis, when a black market is involved, that's when you see the increased criminality, you see the increased violence, you see all sorts of things that that plague communities with regard to it's one of those mornings, folks. Well, so we see what's going on. And so I take my example from I think I cannot think of the name of the country, but what they did was they decriminalized prostitution, and by doing that, that all but eliminated the black market for prostitution and all of the associated crimes of rape, of abuse, of murder, all the different things that went along with it. And so what you're saying is, if we do this right, not only will we see a decrease in arrest rates, but we could potentially see a decrease in the black market and all of the associated crimes that go along with it.
Yes, although, I don't know that the marijuana market in Massachusetts has been connected to a string of murders. But one of our concerns is simply that street dealers are always ready to sell to kids. Whereas if we have regulated stores, the kids will get carded, and we think that is better, and that would be one of the main improvements that we're hoping for.
Right. And the country I was speaking of, thank you, my producer just sent me, it was Sweden. And no, absolutely, we're not connecting marijuana with murders. I was talking specifically with regard to prostitution rings in Sweden. There were a number of murders that take place in that particular black market. And in your case here, you're saying that these the criminalization and the fact that it's still illegal and we can't regulate and sell it, ostensibly it's meant to protect minors, but because it creates a black market, it gives minors more access to it, whereas if they were carded inside of a store, they would have less access.
Yes, that policy has absolutely backfired completely. In fact, I would say that the war on drugs, there are three classes of people that stand out to me that it's a war on. It's absolutely a war on black people. I think it's more a war on black people than just about anything else. It's also a war on kids. It makes marijuana more available to them in a less regulated form. It also causes many kids to be saddled with arrests and convictions that can basically render them almost useless and unemployable for life.
Right.
And it just creates the feeling that our kids are enemies. For instance, in high schools, they send in undercover cops to pose as kids to infiltrate networks of marijuana users.
Okay.
That kind of adversary relation with our kids is kind of like the adversary relation that we cultivate between police and communities.
Maybe we should have started here, because what you just said blows me away. I can absolutely see them sending in undercover agents to break up a child prostitution ring. I can see them going in to break up child pornography ring. I can see them going in to break up a heroin, a cocaine, hard drugs. But you're telling me that they actually, we've seen cases where they've infiltrated high schools for the purposes of breaking a marijuana ring, quote unquote ring?
Right. No, that has definitely happened in more than one school. I would have to go back and, collect statistics, but I know that has been a real problem. Oh, and I also wanted to get, when I said 3 areas, I do want to mention the third one.
Yeah.
It's been a war on the sick.
Right.
There are a lot of people who could really use cannabis as medicine. And they're absolutely being treated like criminals, and they have to buy their drugs on the black market too, which means that what they're getting is less safe and less tailored to their needs. That's one. And supposedly we have medical marijuana in Massachusetts, but not a single dispensary has opened. And the way it looks to us, we're going to have full legalization, even just for marijuana patients to get the medicine they need.
So help me out with this, Andy, because weed is not my current thing. That's just not something that it fell off the radar for me from so many years ago. So I am completely uninformed with regard to the challenges of a person who just wants to smoke a blunt or smoke a joint. I'm at a loss, and I'm blown away by the fact that the crackdown on it is so intense that they've even employed undercover agents to infiltrate that type of. Help me to understand what happens before 2008, before it was decriminalized. What happened to a person who was caught with marijuana in terms of misdemeanors, in terms of felonies, and of course felonies that follow you the rest of your life?
I think most young people, if they were caught with marijuana, it's unlikely that they would go to jail. In many cases, what it comes down to is some sort of forced rehab program. It's the sort of thing that makes people who run rehab centers rich, but it doesn't do much good, and is a giant waste of our resources.
Wow. And now that you said that, I do recall my time teaching in Florida, where several students basically disappeared from school because they were placed in a rehab center, not over heroin, not over cocaine addiction, but over, and I don't even, I'm speaking from a place of ignorance, which is why I have you on here. I don't even know the addiction level of different levels of drugs, right? I mean, but I do know that marijuana does not call for treatment centers. And I've seen students get taken out of school, and they are no longer, they're relegated to this outcast part of society in their mind. This is the way they see it. They've been taken to rehab centers over marijuana, and now they have this stigma, if not on their record permanently, they have a stigma in their own mind about their life and how they view the world. And it just blows me away that we're doing this over a substance that many, and I don't know the research on this, and maybe you can enlighten us on this, many people feel is not as harmful as the cigarettes that we smoke.
Oh, it's definitely not as harmful as the cigarettes that we smoke. We know perfectly well that smoking cigarettes is connected with lung cancer.
Absolutely.
We've done studies to see whether marijuana is connected with lung cancer, and there just isn't the same connection.
Wow.
It's also less harmful than alcohol. Alcohol is an absolutely lethal drug in overdose. There is no such thing as a marijuana overdose. Oh, one thing that I also just want to break in, just because I don't forget to mention it. I said that the war on drugs is a war on kids. And one of the battlefronts in the war on kids is tearing apart families. Overzealous social service workers, perhaps intending the best, can rip a kid out of a home because the parents are using drugs. That the man comes home at the end of the day and smokes a joint. Well, obviously those kids are in terrible danger. And that could happen a lot, and that's one of the main things. We want to have some provisions in any law that is passed that will make it clear that simply smoking marijuana in itself is not cause, to declare a
Get someone
child
out of their
endangered
home.
and rip them out of their home.
Absolutely. Now, even in the state of decriminalization since 2008, is that still happening? Are people still, are social workers still considering a parent who is smoking marijuana in the home to be a threat to the child? Are we still seeing that now, or has that kind of ebbed since 2008?
I wish I had a better answer for you for that. I know that it's a giant issue in many states still. I don't know whether many cases like that are still happening in Massachusetts,
Right.
but
the
but people are.
I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but the idea is absurd because we do know that there is a correlation, probably not causation, but there is a correlation between alcoholism and domestic violence. But I've never seen a person who's smoke weed become belligerent and become dangerous to the people around them, especially the children that they love. So it's just a height of absurdity to see people, that the different ways that this war on drugs, this, let me go off on a tangent real quick. My producer created she put today's show together. My assistant producer, she put the show together, and she titled it. I didn't realize she titled this until till yesterday, that she called it the fake ass war on drugs. And what it really is it's not a war on drugs, but it's the war on people. It's a war, like you said, on children, and it's a war on the sick, and it's a war on minorities, and it's a war. And in any war, somebody gets rich. And in this case, the people who are recipients of these broken people, the people who go to jail, the prison systems, the for-profit systems, those people are getting rich. These rehab centers, those people are getting rich off of tax dollars, and we're not seeing any. I mean, what type of benefit could a person who goes to rehab for marijuana actually get from their time in rehab? It just doesn't make sense to me at all. So here's a question that I want to ask you, and I do this to all of my guests. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of an opponent, and I'm sure there are quite a few opponents to what you guys are trying to do. What are some of the negative ramifications of that you can see, or even if you're arguing from their point of view? Let's say, what are some of the people saying that would be a negative effect, an adverse effect of legalizing marijuana here in Massachusetts?
Well, first of all, the opponents are getting fewer. For instance, there's this guy named Kevin Sabet who practically has to run around the whole country, being the other side of the marijuana legalization initiative. More and more people, celebrities on one hand, or ministers, or conservative, even conservatives are coming out in favor. And then on the other side, well, we have a small group, a relatively, diminishing group of people running around being opponents. What opponents always say is that this is a danger to our children. It will send the message to our children that it's all right. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who feel that sincerely. But of course, I think they're wrong. I think what we've sent the message that we're really sending to our kids is, wink, wink. It's illegal. You aren't really supposed to get it, are you? But we know you will.
Right. That's exactly you took the words out of my mouth, is that we put up this barrier of illegality, but in fact we know full well that our kids have as much access to this as they want. If they want it, they can get it without any, and the only fear is now the fear of getting caught, which in itself creates this mindset of get away with something. And that mindset in itself is detrimental, is more detrimental, in my opinion, to children than taking off this burden of it being illegal and exposing it to them if that is what they want, and letting them make their decisions at a certain age. Of course, we're not going to me personally, I wouldn't let an 8, 9, 10-year-old make that kind of decision, but as they get older, they can make that kind of decision. Andy, listen, I appreciate the conversation. I want to take a break, but before I take a break, I want you to say and just communicate with my listeners anything about the Bay State repeal, anything that's pertinent. the floor is yours. What else do they need to know? And then what do we need to do to help out to make this legal so that we could take this burden off the backs of children, off the backs of the health of the sick, and off the backs of minorities and the impoverished?
Well, of course, we have our website, baystaterepeal.org, and we're certainly accepting donations for the purpose of making sure that if we need to sponsor an initiative, we can get it on the ballot. At a certain point, there will be people going around gathering signatures. We need to gather a certain number of signatures for any measure to be forwarded to the legislature. And if the legislature doesn't act, as we assume it won't, then there will have to be a second round of signature gathering so that it can actually be placed on the ballot and passed, as we hope, in 2016. I think some other concerns that we have is that if an industry is founded in Massachusetts, we don't want it to be a small cartel of rich major players.
Right.
It's okay if there is big weed and major distributors, but we also, just as there is big beer and craft beer, we want to make sure that there's room for craft dope as well as large manufacturers.
Excellent. Andy Haus of Bay State Repeal. Listen, I thank you so much for your time this morning. And anytime that you need to get a message out to our listeners, please reach out to us because I think it's not a matter of whether or not you want to smoke weed. It's not a matter of whether or not you think it's moral. It's a matter of the adverse effects that that criminalization has had, and now the fact that the making it legal, the positive effects of making it legal, what that can mean across the country for so many people, the burden that would be lifted off of our criminal justice system is the same burden that would be lifted off the people who get processed and put in jail for basically smoking a joint. Thank you, Andy. And we're going to take a break, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, we're going to deal a little bit more with Baltimore. We're going to deal with what's going on with the peaceful protests and the mindset of people who want, some people who want riots. Quite frankly, there are some people. So when we come back, we'll deal with that. This is Friday, and it's the Benjamin Dixon Show. We will be back after this break. Hey, Andy, thanks so much, man. You can still hear me. YouTube, you can still hear me.
Join
Anytime
the conversation.
Come on, please let me know.
857-600-0518.
And we'll see you next time.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust. You've tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we just talked about the ramifications of the war on drugs and how that plays a role in what we see happening in what happened in Ferguson, and I believe what's still happening there. What's happening in Baltimore. We look at the war on drugs has pilfered our communities, communities of color, and it has done so to impoverished communities. And so there is a lack of opportunity because of these minor offenses. I remember one time I was applying for a job. I was fresh out of leaving college number one. I've been to quite a few colleges, but I did not graduate from college number one, but I left to transfer to another school. And in between, over the summer, I applied for a job. And as I was doing the phone application, it was an automated system. It got to the question that says, have you used any illegal drugs, including marijuana, in the last 6 months to a year? And of course I had. I mean, I was coming from college. I smoked plenty of weed. And what as I listened to and I considered whether or not I was going to answer truthfully, I had to make a moral decision for myself. And I decided, you know what, if they don't want me because I smoked a little bit of weed, I don't want them. So I answered truthfully. Do you know that automated system did not say thank you? It did not say, unfortunately, you're not qualified. It didn't say anything. It hung up on me. As soon as I said, yes, I've smoked weed, the machine hung up on me. Now, I imagine that if I had said no and I went through the process and they tested me like most of these ridiculously poor paying jobs do, they would have found out anyway, and they would have not hired me. So it's not about just having something on your record. It's about the fact that you can't even get past a drug screening test at Office Depot or wherever because you smoked a little weed. What's funny is teachers in Florida, where I came from, you don't have to pass that test. So if you want to smoke weed and have a professional career, go be a teacher. But anyway, so it's the lack of economic opportunity that drives and fuels the rage. It is in addition to, it's like the insult to injury, in addition to the fact that the police disproportionately focus on communities of color, focus on impoverished communities, and they also express their need for power and their rage, police violence, police brutality. Those things combined creates the combustible situation that we saw in Baltimore on Monday. And what bothers me about it is the seamless conflation, the fact that they want you to think that these riots, the riot, not these plural, the riot that we saw on Monday is indicative of all of the movement. When in actuality, the people were peacefully protesting for days prior, and they were peacefully protesting since. But it's necessary for them to make you believe that everyone who is out there is a violent revolutionary, and they're violent. They won't even call you a revolutionary. Let me take that back. That's my word. They want to call you a violent animal. They want to call you a violent thug, which is why we're so upset with the mayor and, yes, President Obama for falling into that same trap of labeling these people thugs, when in actuality, they are no more thugs than all of those white kids we see destroying stuff after a basketball game, after a hockey game. If those kids who are destroying things after the basketball game and the hockey game are misguided youth, then what are our kids? And so, yes, the mayor of Baltimore owed the nation an apology. And so does President Obama. Because President Obama, if you're going to label these kids who have no economic opportunity, who have constantly live in fear of the police, not just because they may have done something wrong, but simply because they're walking down the streets in an environment where the police take advantage. If you're going to label them thugs, then what does that say about you, President Obama? I've supported you. I've supported you long enough that we can call a spade a spade. You have to be more fastidious with your words. And you cannot fall into the trap of Fox News where it plays. See, when you say thug, you play into the same dog whistle mentality that strokes that latent racism inside of some white Americans, because oddly enough, it was some other white Americans who called y'all out on that. And so when you say thug, it is a dog whistle no longer, but it's communicating racial connotations to white communities who look at us with disdain, and you're playing right into what they want. So we'll be waiting on the apology from President Obama. But all this to get around to the flip side. I want you to understand the unique position that I personally am in, and then some people like me. We're in this category where we completely identify with the protesters. We understand the frustration of the rioters. We feel the need for this movement to continue and to grow. But at the same time, I find myself fighting against people inside of that movement. At the same time, I find myself fighting against people with the same skin color, with the same political affiliation. I mean, I find myself fighting against them because people are so frustrated, which is understandable and rightfully so. But there are some conversations about, and I just call a spade a spade. In my community, there are some people who are talking about the violent side of this equation, who are talking about violent revolution. There are some people who are talking about, being ready to die for this revolution. And you know what? I have to call bullshit when I see it. No matter where I see it, if it's coming from the right, I'm going to call it out. If it's coming from the left, I'm going to call it out. If it's coming from my people, I'm going to call it out. And I'm calling it out. All of these people who are out here talking about they're willing to die for this revolution. I need to know, did you vote in your last election? Because if you did not vote, not in the presidential election, but I'm talking about your mayoral election, not even the governor election, the gubernatorial election, but in your local election. Because riddle me this, if you really want to change the culture of the police department, do you not realize that you have the power to do so by changing the leadership of the police department? Because these corrupt cultures are only existing because of the apathy of leadership. In other words, leaders who turned a blind eye to racist cops allow this environment to be perpetuated. And if you, as an individual who's out there fighting this battle, thank you for fighting this battle. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for being in the streets when most of us can't. Most of us don't live close enough. Most of us are trapped in this capitalistic cycle of going to work and doing our job and coming home with just enough energy to fall in the bed. And so thank you for everyone who is on the front line. But now my question is, everyone who's on the front line, everyone who's on the back line, everyone who's participating, did you vote in your last mayoral election? Are you satisfied with the mayor of Baltimore? And by virtue of the mayor, I'm not 100% of the structure of the mayor. I don't know if she's a strong mayor or a weak mayor. I don't know if the city is actually run by her or is the city run by a city manager. I do know this, though, that there is political accountability to the people, either through the mayor are through the councilmen and the aldermen. And if you're not satisfied with the treatment that the Baltimore Police Department is giving you, if you think that they are racist, if you think that they are abusing the community, if you think that they are criminals themselves, did you vote to put a mayor in, or councilman in, or alderman in that are going to shake up that community, the police community, who is going to change the culture and the environment? Because if you didn't, why are you swearing up and down that you're going to fight the power and you're willing to die for this revolution when your ass could have changed this by voting? And all the people are saying voting doesn't do anything. But I can listen to that argument on the presidential level. You know what? We can have it. I might agree with you on the presidential level, but you cannot tell me that if local elections are won by 5,000 votes, you can't tell me that your vote doesn't mean anything, that you can't get rid of the mayor who just called all the black kids on Monday thugs. You can't get rid of her. You can't tell me that there's not enough political power in the African-American community and impoverished communities to put people in power that are going to create environments that get rid of the racist, animal, barbaric, Napoleonistic cowards that are hiding behind badges. If you really want to change this, then after you are out there protesting, register your behind to vote so that you can not only affect change in the community, in the broader community psyche by showing them that you're not going to take this anymore, because that's what protests do. You're letting them know that you're not taking this anymore, right? We are making a very vocal statement that the police brutality will not be tolerated. Now, the next step in the equation is to politically get rid of leadership that is apathetic or incapable of changing the corrupt police systems in your city. I'm not talking about whether or not you're going to vote for Hillary Clinton or Deval Patrick. I'll just throw that out there. Somebody needs to start. We're ready for Deval. I'm not talking about the presidential level. I am talking about your local city and your local alderman. I'm talking about the thing that you can go and touch, the people you can go to the meetings, those people. You can go to the council meeting. You don't have to be a great organizer to change your city. You just have to realize the power that you do have. And so for everyone who is out there swearing up and down that this is the revolution will be televised, I applaud you. And all the people saying, you know what, let's go out, let our kids go out there. If they have to burn something down, let them burn something down. Did you vote? Because if you didn't vote, you're not worth anything to us. You're just talking. And if you think voting has no power, look at Ferguson. Look at Chicago. Look at Jacksonville, Florida, where the election is coming back around and it's only a 5% margin between who's going to be the mayor of Jacksonville, Florida. And you cannot tell me that the mayor does not have a direct effect on the culture of the police department. Look at New York City. Look at Mayor de Blasio. He's in the fight for his life, sure enough. He's in the fight for his life, absolutely. He's in the fight for his political life. But is he not fighting on behalf of what needs to happen in communities of color and impoverished communities? Can he do more? Probably. I don't know the entire breadth and depth of what he's done or what he's doing, but I do know that it is a dynamic change since Bloomberg, and God knows it's a big change since crazy behind Rudy Giuliani. And so if change can happen on the scope and size in a city the size of New York City, slowly but surely, what do you think can happen in Ferguson if you guys went out and voted? So this is my beef. This is my personal beef. I don't care who you are. I don't care. You can call me what you want to call me. The truth of the matter is, if you did not vote, and if you're not registered to vote, and if you're not using the political weapons at your disposal, you're just talking trash. You're pointless. You don't mean nothing to the cause. You're a detriment to the cause, because a body on the street is not as important as a body in the poll booth. Poll booth. Did I say that? Yeah, I said that right. It doesn't. Not when these mayoral elections are won by like the smallest margin of error, within the margin of error. And here's the other thing. And shouts to my producer. We were going to do a Freedom Friday segment, but we're running out of time. We'll do it on Monday. Monday, we're going to do a segment on some exciting things that are happening on the science tip. So let's do that on Monday. But here's my final thing. And I call in, whatever, Facebook me, whatever. I don't care. I one thing I like is somebody to try to challenge me, especially when I'm right, and I'm usually right. But I'll admit when I'm wrong, but I'm usually right. All these people who are there's not a lot. There's not a lot. I'm not going to make it seem like it's a lot. But there are a few people with platforms, and I've seen videos of them who are talking about going out and being violent. Legitimately, they're saying violence. They are inciting violence. Let me tell you something. And anyone who talks against it, they call a coon, or they call a bed wench, or they call whatever, they try to dismiss you. This is inside politics. This is inside baseball, folks. I'm just giving you some of the nitty gritty that happens inside. This is all on this side of the argument, right? At the same time, I'm fighting against the idiots on the right and the ultra conservatives who are creating these problems, and the barbaric animals of policemen. That fight. This is not an either or. It's a both and. I have to fight both fights. I have to fight the idiots on the right as much as I have to fight the idiots on the left. Because if you're stupid is as stupid does, I'm gonna call you out. But for anyone who is trying to incite violence, I want you to understand something. And then I saw a video of this girl. I followed her because she had one good video. I might unfollow her now. She's talking about letting your kids go out and be a part of this, of the violence, of the riots. Do you realize what this system did to its own children at Kent State University? Not what they did to Black people at Kent State University, not what they did to impoverished people at Kent State University, what they did to their own children at Kent State University, in broad daylight, with cameras rolling. They killed. It was a massacre. And they did that to protect the status quo. Now, all of you who are talking about a violent revolution, and it's not many, it's a few idiots. What do you think they'll do to your kids? Tell me that. What do you think that they would do to your kids? And what is your end game? What is your end game? Do you think you have enough guns to fight the United States of America? Because I don't care how many guns you have. They have nukes. Game over. Check and made. So what is the purpose of defaming and decrying people who are trying to show you how you can change this system from within the system, if all of the energy that we see happening in Baltimore right now is bottled up and taken to the polls? They do not fear your weapons, period. They do not fear your riots. They fear your political protest, and they fear your political action. And so the people who have been in Baltimore before Monday protesting, that's what they fear. The people who have been protesting since, that's what they fear. They do not fear your violence. They did not fear that riot on Monday. They revel in that. They are waiting for an opportunity. I saw a meme this morning. They are so quick to send out the National Guard on Black people, but they did not send the National Guard out to help them during Katrina until it was too late. They are waiting for the opportunity to crush us through violence. They would love that. But you know what they are terrified of is if you get your black ass to the poll and vote in numbers. Because then you change who is in power. You get rid of this mayor. If this mayor is not going to fix this situation, get rid of her. I don't care if she was black. I don't care if she's Kunta Kinte black. I don't care if she was a Democrat. I don't care if she was down for, I don't care who she is. If she does not fix this situation in her city, then get rid of her, get rid of the commissioner, well, it's too late to get rid of President Obama. He's already out the door. But if he calls us thugs, Hillary Clinton or whoever's running on the Democratic side, you better get that out of your vocabulary now. Because if you slip up and call black people thugs, you might as well call us a nigger. So I'm saying this. What they don't fear your violence. They don't fear your riots. They don't fear your guns because they have more. These people are they were born, they were bred in violence. They came to the United States was born in violence. Everything about the United States is violence. If there's anything that they've mastered, they have mastered violence. And do you think they are afraid of your guns or your rocks? No, they are terrified of your vote. Plain and simple. That's why they try to keep you from voting for hundreds of years. That's why they keep prisoners. They disenfranchise prisoners because they know if anybody is going to be politically active, it's a prisoner who gets out of jail. But they take away their power to vote because they're not afraid of him being violent because they can put him right back in jail. They are afraid of a prisoner getting out and voting and becoming politically active, so they take away that power. You tell me, what do they fear the most? They don't fear your violence. They don't fear your violent rhetoric. They don't fear your power. They don't fear anything other than your power to vote, because your power to vote can get rid of all of them and put in people who are going to be holden to you. Recognize your power. Don't get caught in all of these fanciful dreams of violent revolution, when we can have a revolution every election cycle. Put somebody in, they don't do the job, vote their ass out. Put somebody else in, they don't do the job, vote their ass out. And by the next person you put in, I guarantee you, they will realize they are only there so long as you allow them to be there. So what's the point of swearing up and down that you're going to die for this revolution when all you had to do was vote? I'm done.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
Which we need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
All right, folks. And just because it's my show and I can do what I want, it's Friday. There's a new movie out. I'm going to see it. You go see it. Avengers, we all need a little break. Not a long break. After we get it done, we get right back where we were, and we keep fighting this fight. And last but not least, my favorite thing of the day.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
We'll see you next time, folks.